And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth, a great nation, though, that is unclear about what happens next in the Strait of Hormuz. Who gets to control the Strait of Hormuz? Is there going to be war, an intensified war, increased war, or will there be some kind of ceasefire imposed between the United States and Iran? We will be getting to that news. Also to other uncertain questions about the Senate of the United States and its control. One of the senior members of the U.S. Senate, Mitch McConnell, former majority leader and longtime and widely respected member of the Senate from Kentucky, is in the hospital. And there are reports just breaking now that he is in a very bad condition. And that means that his 1 out of 100 Senate seats is a question mark because of Kentucky law. We will get to that. There's also a question about Graham Platner. No question about him being out of the race, but what happens to his replacement as the Democratic nominee for the Senate in Maine? And that is deeply unclear after the 11-minute video that was posted last night by Graham Platner, in which he conceded nothing and attacked the leaders of his own party, but recognized that his position was completely untenable. And with the one after another and new charges of sexual poor behavior, there's not much of a political future. It does not appear for Graham Platner. The question is, who takes his place? We will get to that on the Medved Show and get to a question about changing the Constitution. And that bears actually with some of the suggestions on some of the situations, like particularly the situation with Mitch McConnell, which there's a headline which says Mitch McConnell nears deadline, and which is basically claiming that he's in much worse condition with a recovering from a cardiac arrest, apparently. That at least is one of the reports. We will get to that on the Medved Show. First off, the United States and Iran exchanged fire for a second consecutive day today, extending a pattern of hostilities that had all but shattered their fragile truce and left the Middle East suspended between war and peace. It has not suspended between war and peace anymore. It has descended back into war. Both countries appear to intensify their attacks in this latest round, expanding the scope or number of targets. The U.S. military said overnight that it had struck more than 170 targets in Iran during the previous 48 hours. This is a significant uptick. Just think about that, 170 targets, and each one of these hit by different aircrafts on different missions, different parts of the country. It's a very serious escalation of the war. And Jordan, which hosts some U.S. military forces but had not been a focus of Tehran's ire in recent flare-ups, said that the nation of Jordan, one of our best allies in the Arab world, had intercepted Iranian missiles in its airspace. Iran also said it had fired at U.S. targets in our Gulf nation allies of Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain. Wow. It was unclear whether the fighting would continue to worsen. Iran threatened today to expand its attacks to other American facilities in the region. This is a day after President Trump said he thought the ceasefire was over, even as he suggested he was still open to peace, and insisted on describing his Iranian counterparts as scum. Tough to to have a lot of good hope for an agreement when you're saying that your counterparts are not worthy of any sort of agreement or trust at all. Iran said 14 people have been killed and 78 injured in the latest round of tit-for-tat strikes, which began after Washington accused Iranian forces of targeting commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. military said its strikes had focused on military targets on the Iranian coast to degrade the threat to commercial shipping in the strait. Iran has not directly taken responsibility for strikes in the waterway, but has insisted that ships adhere to a designated route through its own territorial waters. Meanwhile, the New York Times is reporting that there are funeral delays. The burial of Ayatollah Khamenei in the holy city of Mashdad, his body has been lying around unburied since February 28th when he was killed. He was killed during an airstrike by the U.S. and Israel. The burial of Ayatollah Khamenei's remains in the holy city of Mashdad was delayed by several hours today. The Iranian authorities said that large crowds in the Iraqi cities of Najaf and Karbala, where hundreds of thousands had gathered for the funeral procession yesterday, that had led to the delay. There is also this, that the Washington Post reports that the U.S. has been intensifying its strikes on Iran's coast along the Strait of Hormuz. They say the U.S. forces hit 90 targets overnight last night, mostly along Iran's coastline with the Strait of Hormuz, stepping up a renewed bombing campaign after President Trump said he thought a tentative truce agreement was over. Iran, in turn, fired drones and missiles at U.S. military targets in the Persian Gulf region and in Jordan, marking the second day of the tit-for-tat strikes. The renewed military action after huge crowds in Tehran vowed revenge against America during elaborate funeral rites this week for their assassinated supreme leader, the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, and after Trump's called Iran's leader scum, signaled that the war is far from winding down. No evidence of winding down at all. Just last month, the United States and Iran announced a framework for ending the war, spurring short-lived worldwide relief. Now control of the Strait of Hormuz remains a sticking point, with neither side willing to accept the other's terms, and Iran continuing to attack some ships as they transit through the narrow waterway, which is vital to global commerce. The strikes in recent days, the first round of which hit 80 targets, according to the U.S. military, and the new barrage of 90 more overnight, so that total of 170. That followed attacks by Iran on ships passing through the strait. The U.S. strikes were intended to further degrade Iran's ability to attack commercial shipping and innocent civilian mariners in the Strait of Hormuz, said U.S. Central Command. More coming up on the latest in war, peace, and politics on The Medved Show. And on the Michael Medved Show, there's a piece in The Hill reporting that the governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear, who is a Democrat who is being highly touted by media and by elements of the Democratic Democratic Party and Democratic leadership, highly touted as a potential presidential candidate coming up in 2028. Governor Beshear sent a letter yesterday to Senator Mitch McConnell's office. Mitch McConnell is a senator from Kentucky, but he's not a Democrat like Andy Beshear, the governor. He's a Republican, of course, and he was the Republican leader in the Senate for many years. In any event, they sent a letter to Senator McConnell's office requesting an update on the senator's health. This is weeks after he was hospitalized. Senate GOP leaders said they spoke with McConnell in the past few days by phone and expect him to return to the Senate. But that hasn't quelled speculation about his condition. McConnell's office hasn't provided information about what caused his hospitalization last month or his current status, other than to say that he's improving. And everybody says they spoke to him for 20 minutes on the phone, which, of course, since everybody says it was for 20 minutes, you wonder, are they coordinating a cover-up story? There is a piece that has gotten a great deal of circulation, a piece from X by a Washington observer named Ken Klippenstein, who says, as 84-year-old Senator Mitch McConnell and his witness protection grade hospitalization near their fourth week, a key deadline looms. The deadline is August 3rd. Under Kentucky law, if McConnell is declared unfit for office before that date of August 3rd, there's a special election to fill out his term. His term is over of January of 2027. So next January coming up, no more Mitch McConnell term in the Senate. He retires anyway. After that date, the date of August 3rd, the seat sits empty until whoever wins November's already scheduled race is sworn in on January 3rd. A longtime Capitol Hill source told this Ken Klippenstein that congressional Republicans don't want to risk a special election, fearing that GOP voters might nominate a MAGA candidate and or someone friendlier to their party establishment. Kentucky's Democratic governor, Andy Beshear, has now entered the fray, sending McConnell's office a letter today requesting a health update, a first step potentially toward appointing an interim senator and flipping the seat blue. That would require a constitutional challenge to the law as it was described earlier. In either case, Republican or Democratic power grab, the voters of Kentucky are deprived of a meaningful say in who represents them. And they're also deprived that meaningful say by not having any answer as to what is going on with Senator McConnell. Now, a number of people have brought up that it can't be that's family business. Her family is Chinese American, but she's not. And she apparently, like everybody else, says she's spoken to her husband on the phone and he's doing fine. He can speak for 20 minutes at a time. Congress, meanwhile, only cares about itself, says Ken Klippenstein. Lawmakers stayed almost completely silent about McConnell's unexplained absence for more than 2 weeks. During that stretch, he missed more than 20 votes, including a knife-edge resolution to curb Trump's war powers over Iran. The reason is simple. Nobody wants to invite scrutiny of health and fitness in a gerontocracy, meaning a government of elderly people, especially when members on both sides of the aisle have something to hide. There's another Republican member, not of the Senate, but of the House of Representatives, and Representative Keene of New Jersey, who was gone for 100 days. He didn't show up. And nobody knew until he came back to the House dramatically and revealed he had been hospitalized for depression and treated intensely for depression. All of this comes to questions about term limits, health requirements, and congressional service. This is one of the suggestions for a change in the U.S. Constitution to permit term limits for members of Congress, which we do not have. And also the suggestion would be a change in the Constitution to create term limits for members of the Supreme Court, which would be a fairly radical change. And meanwhile, this matter with Mitch McConnell, we don't know what is going on. There's an independent journalist named Desiree Townsend who forced officialdom's hand when she published a dispatch audio of the emergency response at McConnell's home, audio in which a dispatcher reports a cardiac arrest. Facing pressure this week for answers, Senate Republican leaders John Thune and John Barrasso offered vague reassurances. They said they'd spoken with McConnell by phone for 20 minutes each and that everything was perfectly fine. Recent accounts of conversations with McConnell are suspiciously uniform. Nearly everyone claims to have talked to him for 20 minutes about a range of complex policy issues. Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massey, who lost in his primary attempting to run for re-election, he was opposed by President Trump, and the Trump-endorsed candidate won. Thomas Massey did not. But he posted his own parody version on X, saying, "I spoke to McConnell for about 20 minutes this morning. He said we should end the war with Iran, quit giving aid to Israel, stop spying on Americans without a warrant, and he's really sorry about how my primary turned out." More coming up on somebody else's primary, Graham Platner, and where he's going. Coming up. And on the Michael Medved show last night, Graham Platner, the Democratic nominee, and he had won the Democratic nomination for senator in Maine. He's running against, or had been running against, Susan Collins, who has served 6 terms in the Senate. She's been a fixture in Maine politics. And she generally, by the way, runs ahead of her polls. And in the polls, she was tied with Graham Platner, but she is not running as well against some of the replacements for Graham Platner, hence his replacement. And he's terminating his campaign without a clear replacement in mind or in line. This is part of the video that Platner released last night, and it shows him at a deck sitting out with the forest in the background.
I believe that for the movement to continue, it can't be me. And for that reason,
he's trying to cry here.
We are suspending campaign operations.
Dum, dum, dum.
This is incredibly difficult because I know that some will think it's an admission of guilt, and it most certainly is not. We're not doing it because of the allegations. We're doing it because of the structures that are being taken away from us. Responsibility to everyone who has worked so hard to get us to where we are.
Okay, everyone who's worked so hard to get us to where we are, and he feels a certain amount of responsibility. This without admitting that, if nothing else, the accusations against him were handled incredibly poorly by him. And he, of course, insists that he never did anything wrong, that the charges of violent abuse of some of his former girlfriends, of sending out sexual material on the internet to people not his wife while he has been married the last 3 years. President Trump had a reaction coming home from Ankara and the NATO summit. President Trump had some reaction to the Graham Platner allegations, including the allegations of rape. President Trump said this, clip 33.
Democrat, you know, like us, as I go up the Democrats. Democrat, you know what a
Speaking of Democrats, do you think that the Democrats should be able to pick a replacement for Graham Platner? He's had all these new allegations that have come out. Now Democrats are talking about picking a replacement for him. Should they be able to do that?
They're picking what?
A replacement for Graham Platner if he steps out of the race.
So he won the primary.
Mm-hmm. And now there's these new allegations.
It's very hard for them to do. And it's really a question of whether or not you believe the woman. A lot of people say big falsehoods. It's, he's in a bind. He's in a bind. But should they be able to do it? Well, I guess he's going to lose. I would imagine he's going to lose. It's very interesting when a Republican woman came out with the same charge, nobody believed her. When this woman came out, everybody believed her, right, Doug? Did you get any pictures of it, Doug?
Okay, this is, I don't think President Trump has been following this case very closely. The idea is it's a series of revelations about Graham Platner and indicating that you may not list character as your first concern when selecting someone for the U.S. Senate, but it has to be a concern. You can't simply ignore it and suggest that somebody who has so many indications of people being willing to come to the public and to talk about the behavior that he has demonstrated, and not years and years ago. Right now, of course, this is coming out at a time where President Trump is been ordered by a court to come up with the money, which is actually being held in trust right now, to be paid to E. Jean Carroll. President Trump was also accused of rape, and a jury found that he was guilty of assault. So obviously this is a very sensitive point for the president to be answering. Basically, what he suggests is that he saw it coming because he predicted everything. Here is President Trump on the current situation with Iran. Clip 13.
Thank you, Mr. President. Steve Sedgwick from CNBC. The oil markets are up today around about 7% for WTI and Brent as well. The world is taking you at your word, sir, that the MOU is over, that the ceasefire is over. What happens next, sir? Are we on the cusp of a full-scale return to full conflict?
Well, I'll tell you what happens next. We're never going to see Iran have a nuclear weapon because that's much more important than the numbers you're talking about. The prices of oil are dropping like a rock. Now they'll be up a little bit, and this will end very quickly. We have an oil glut right now because we got all those boats out of the strait, and it's going to drop, and I've predicted everything. I've been right about everything, and I have been for a long time. That's how I got to be president 3 times. That's how I won 3 elections. I did very well in the second one, won it. It was a rigged election, but I've been right.
Again, the president of the United States is saying it was a rigged election, and I won 3 elections. Does that really ring true to anyone? That he won 3 elections? He's going back to the quote, rigged election that he lost by 7 million votes. It's just astonishing. Tom Nichols actually was on television and had the following to say about President Trump's mental state. It's almost like we have a relative in the room and there's something deeply wrong with him, and we are all agreed not to talk about it. But there is something deeply wrong with President Trump. His friends know it. His critics know it. His staff, I'm sure, knows it. The world knows it. World leaders know it. And most importantly, our enemies know it, which is why they don't take him seriously. Nobody hangs on his words. They kind of do, but mostly out of freakish curiosity to see what kind of wild thing he's going to say next. Not because his words have any inherent meaning or reflect policy. You know, I spent years teaching students that when the president speaks, it's policy. And you must pay attention when the president speaks because nobody can contradict him. Now, you know, are we really cutting off all trade with Spain? Who knows? Maybe, maybe not. It might have been a stray electron, you know, careening around inside his brain pan. Who knows? But this is really dangerous because in the middle of all this stuff, and we can laugh about, you know, the Islamic Republic of Japan, which he mentioned yesterday had attacked us, and all of that, but he made several statements about no ongoing war that the United States is losing. And no one's even trying to pretend that they can make any sense of it. Yeah, but we're struggling to do that. More from President Trump and the situation in Iran coming up on the Medved Show.
Join in your daily dose of debate.
I listen to you occasionally when I'm driving. Turns my stomach every time I do.
The Michael Medved Show.
And on the Michael Medved Show, there was a dramatic change of tone, at least, and an actual change of substance in terms of President Trump's reaction to the current leaders of Iran. He doesn't know anything about the supreme leader of Iran, the son of the late supreme leader, who was killed in the first hours of the war. But President Trump had generous things to say about Iranian leaders. He called them rational people, nice people to deal with, smart people, and strong people. Those are all things that the president suggested are adjectives that apply to the Iranian leadership that has been calling for death to America for almost 50 years. Okay, he was asked about this, and this is during his visit to Ankara for the NATO summit, and his answer is fairly direct and maybe even effective. Here is President Trump and his question about a change in his reaction to the Iranian leadership. Clip 14.
With the New York Times. Last month, you said Iranian leaders were very rational people, nice people to deal with, strong people, smart people. Today, you said they were scum, sick people, and being led by sick people. What changed, and do you think
I got to know them. So I've said that about a lot. Now, when you say rational, I think they're much more rational than level 1, level 2. Level 1 is gone. Level 2 is gone. This is level 3. I think they are more rational, but based on their actions over the last week or two, they're not doing a service to the people. And I think more than anything else is I got to know them. And I'm not sure I want to make a deal with them. We can play games, but I'm not sure I want to make a deal. Let's just finish the job.
Let's just finish the job. And what exactly is finishing the job? This is something that a one-time rival to President Trump, Nikki Haley, something she talked about, finishing the job. But President Trump on Iran claiming they still want to make a deal so badly. Now, this, he says, in the midst of the funeral rites on behalf of the Ayatollah Khomeini, And that kind of rhetoric that they have been using has been for revenge, revenge, revenge. So it's hard to believe that they are now begging for a deal again. Here is President Trump saying, well, they called a little while ago. This is clip 11.
There are many ways we could win, but we've already won militarily. They have very little left, and they want to make a deal so badly. They called a little while ago. They want to make a deal so badly. I just don't know if they're worthy of making the deal. I don't know that they're going to honor the deal. That's the problem.
If they want to make a deal, why do you think they attacked commercial vessels?
Because they're sort of crazy, to be honest with you. They're sort of crazy. They're a little bit out of control, but they want to make a deal. Badly.
Okay. It's a terrific question from the unidentified reporter. If they want to make a deal so badly, why are they attacking our allies right now in the Middle East, attacking Qatar and Bahrain and Jordan? And I mean, really, why is that going on? Well, there are lots of things that President Trump really can't explain. For instance, he basically believes that he should have won the Nobel Peace Prize. And it's funny because he talks about that the way he talks about, quote, winning the election in 2020, the rigged election, that it was somehow he was gypped. It was rigged against him. Here is President Trump on his way home from Ankara. This is clip 12.
They probably will do the wrong thing. It's very sad with Norway, but I would say I should have won that award more than anybody that ever received the Nobel Peace Prize. Because nobody settled wars. I settled 8 of them because of a certain type of personality I was able to settle. Think of it, India and Pakistan. You know, because you covered it, that war was raging. They were wicked to it. 11 planes were shot down, and that war was going to go nuclear. The Prime Minister of Pakistan said President Trump saved from 30 to 50 million lives. Well, guess what? It could have been a lot more than that.
Okay, and again, yes, he should have won that award, he believes. And then the question, is he going to go forward with his threats to punish our NATO allies by pulling U.S. troops out of Europe? And President Trump, after what a lot of people thought was a fairly successful meeting of the NATO leaders, at least there was no shouting at one another. This was not like that unfortunate interchange they had in the Oval Office with President Zelensky. Everybody seemed to be getting along. Trump even said nice things about Zelensky. But he was asked about pulling American forces out of the European theater. And here is what the president had to say, clip 44.
U.S. troops out of Europe, and if so, how many and where specifically?
I haven't made that final determination. A lot's going to depend on Greenland, and a lot. I mean, make a very good deal on Greenland. And if we don't, maybe I will.
Okay, he's still pushing to make a deal on Greenland to acquire this Danish territory for the United States. Better that he should pay some attention to what Nikki Haley had to say when she was speaking about the prospects of peace in the Middle East with Iran. This is the former governor of South Carolina, former presidential candidate, Nikki Haley, 99.
It's not, do we go back in? It's, do you leave Iran stronger than they were pre-war? Are we willing to allow that to happen? Are we willing to allow them to threaten all the ships that go through the Strait of Hormuz? Are we willing to allow them to continue to fund their terrorist proxies? Are we willing to have them go and continue their nuclear ambitions? The answer to all 3 of those is no. We don't like those answers. But at the end of the day, if you started it, you have to finish it. And this is one where this is not the U.S. alone. We need to get our Gulf allies. We need to get the Europeans. We need to finish this. The Gulf allies do not want to be in this situation right now. They were encouraging President Trump to finish the deal. When he is pulled back, they're not happy with that. Our European allies are not happy with where we are. We need to pull them all together and finish this. This is not going to take 6 months. This is going to take commitment to say, finish the job, bring Iran to their knees, stop with the release of the frozen assets, stop with the sanction waivers, and finish what you started. They were weak already. We had them at the weakest they had ever been. Right. And then we caved. That can't happen.
That is the former UN ambassador, the former governor of South Carolina and presidential candidate, Nikki Haley, and making sense and talking sensibly. And again, it's different what you hear from Pete Hegseth. He is talking about the upcoming targets for Iran. But is this an accurate prediction of what's going to happen? No, we'll get to that. We will also get to the latest about the NATO summit, which is now over. And importantly, at that NATO summit, there seemed to be a reconciliation of kinds, and certainly a coming closer between the United States and Ukraine. President Trump said he would grant Ukraine a license to manufacture Patriot anti-air missiles, an air defense system crucial for intercepting Russian ballistic missile attacks. And he struck a notably warmer tone toward Ukraine, praising its recent campaign of long-range drone strikes against oil refineries and other infrastructure inside Russia. More on the war in Ukraine. No, it's not one of those wars that President Trump has claimed yet to have settled, but it continues and continues maybe in a dramatically new direction. We'll get to all of it here in this greatest nation on God's green earth.